We really need to get better at like cold opens.
We do. I don't know. We'll get there someday.
Roll. Hey guys, this is Ben. Welcome to the Bible is Metal.
Welcome back to the Bible is Metal.
This is your non-bearded host, Ben, and then that's your bearded.
This is your bearded host, Levi.
I mean, I do kind of have a host, but it looks like a moss growing on my face or something like that. It's not.
You got the moss look going on.
Yeah.
If you can see the skin underneath the hair, that's the moss look. I mean, it's not bad, you know.
I mean, I keep it generally trimmed so it looks more like a 4 o'clock shadow kind of thing. But also, our bathroom is so small. There's nowhere for me to shave without getting.
Oh yeah, without getting hair absolutely everywhere.
Hair everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So,
thankfully, we have 2 bathrooms, and if I destroy one, it's we still got the other.
Yeah, that's the next step, is move up into the world to the point where I can have a second bathroom.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
It's valuable, man. For Michelle and I's first 5 years of marriage, we were in a one bathroom place, and it wasn't good.
No.
Especially in the mornings, after a rough night of eating spicy food or drinking beer or whatever.
Yeah.
You wake up the next morning, and if she's in the bathroom, I'm pretty much screwed at that point. If I got to go, well, hello, trash can. I've had to do that a couple times.
That's a little sad, but I understand.
Yeah.
No, the worst is when it's the other way around, when I've had a long night of eating beer or eating something spicy, and then I drop a deuce, and then you can't go within 20 feet of the bathroom for like an hour.
Yeah.
Like, you just kind of ruin the entire half of the house. Like, there's nothing else you can do about that, and it kind of makes me sad.
Pretty much.
And I get a lot of shame for that, but that's okay.
Hey, at least she loves you.
She does love me, so we're good.
So it's Black Friday.
It is Black Friday.
Yeah.
Only in America will we trample people for things on sale the day after being thankful for what we already have.
The day after we're trying to pretend that we're thankful for our lives.
Right? Hey, all I like to think about, it's not Black Friday shopping, it's a mosh pit with prizes.
That's exactly what it is. A mosh pit with prizes. And the prize is a TV that cost exactly the same as it did yesterday.
I know. Like, you can, well, I mean, yesterday, here's the thing. If you go shopping on Thanksgiving for Black Friday, I will judge you as a human being. Like, there's something morally wrong with that.
Are you the kind of people that gets mad when people decorate for Christmas before Thanksgiving?
No,
Okay.
If we had time, I would have decorated for Christmas like last month.
Gotcha.
It's not that. It's just like, on principle, we're taking Thanksgiving and literally turning it into the exact opposite thing, which it just annoys me. I don't know. I can't. That doesn't sit right with me.
Like, I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older and dumber. It's probably that, but I feel like Thanksgiving these days has become less and less of a holiday for me, because like I try to be thankful throughout the year.
Right.
And like it's like we as Westerners pick one specific day to celebrate thankfulness, or like celebrate the first Thanksgiving, with the whole Pilgrim story and all that stuff.
The reality is, I don't know how many people actually celebrate that.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, it's a really easy straw man to attack, because then they ended up, like, because of all the genocide things.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I don't think Thanksgiving stands for that anymore.
Yeah, it's not even about that anymore.
It's kind of like saying, well, I mean, Christians do this when they're like, don't celebrate Christmas because it's a pagan holiday.
Yeah.
Or had roots in a pagan holiday. And like, no one celebrates the pagan holiday anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, beyond the fact that bringing a live tree and hanging shiny things on it is the behavior of a drunk man, but into your house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I definitely think, like, if you want to get to protest something, protest the fact that people literally die and will kill each other over a TV. That's just so stupid.
Yeah, I would protest over that. What I love about Black Friday is going out and kind of just watching people.
It's a great people watching day.
It's almost as bad as being the person who's killing people. Like, I'm just the person watching the madness over there with my latte, just kind of to myself.
You have like one Switch game and you're like, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and then you have like two people literally getting into like a gladiator death match over the last like sound system or whatever.
Yeah, for real. Like I was in Walmart one time for Black Friday, and this was before I got married, and like I'm just kind of walking around because this is my Black Friday tradition. I like to walk out and just see people, and I feel like Walmart and the mall, Walmart more so is the place to go if you really want to see some madness.
Like Walmart's a zoo.
It is
before Black Friday.
Yeah,
like,
and there was this one woman who was like she wanted this TV, and I feel like it's always a TV. Like
it's always a TV.
It's always a TV. Everybody wants a freaking TV on Black Friday, and I'm like,
dude, there was. My father-in-law showed me there was like a 50-inch 4K smart TV that Walmart had as a doorbuster for $150.
That's pretty good.
I know. I said there's like, if I didn't have to, risk my life to get that, I'd think about it.
Yeah. But there was this woman who really wanted this TV. She's been in line, and I think she's like second, third to last, or third to the end of the line to get it. And by the time she like gets to being the second to the final person to get one, they've run out. Like, sorry, like we've given them all out. And she gets super pissed, like starts throwing stuff and starts pushing people around, and like just is storming out. Storming out of the area. She probably went somewhere else to go grab something, but she's like, I waited in this line for freaking, however many hours. I've been here all night. And,
oh my gosh.
And it's like, you do that stuff at your own risk, you know, like just because you've waited in line that long doesn't mean you deserve the TV.
Yeah.
Because somebody, literally everybody that was before you that did get the TV
waited in line longer,
technically longer than you did, or at least were a little more dedicated and on time and got there quicker than you.
Right.
So it's like, yeah,
look, if
you don't, this isn't Oprah. This isn't the Oprah show. You don't get something just because you participated.
Yeah, everyone doesn't get a TV.
Yeah.
So,
but it's I understand. People get upset. They get mad for not having, whatever it is they waited and worked so hard to get or whatever.
Yeah.
Why do I feel like your audio is super spiking right now?
Because I'm also like right in front of the mic.
True, I'm not right in front of the mic.
Because when I get right, like that's the only way you can hear me. Because your voice, I don't know why your voice carries so much better.
Yeah, I don't know, it's something in my throat or something.
Yeah, like I sound like I have something stuck in it, and I'm holding my nose, and I'm 9 feet away. So anyway, what have you been listening to, man?
Dude, so like. I'm almost ashamed to say. Please
tell me. As long as it isn't like Taylor Swift.
No. Okay. I mean, if I'm being honest, I can rock out to some Taylor Swift.
It depends. Her old stuff I'm okay with. Her new stuff is just kind of cringy.
I don't know. We won't talk about that on this podcast. But okay. I won't say the name because we didn't mention the name at the last episode, but the band that you showed me after the episode is done, you know what I'm talking about?
I know which one you're talking about.
So I was curious, and so I listened to their most recent album just to kind of hear it, and I'm cracking up the whole time.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's pretty funny.
And they're good too. Like
they are
from a technical standpoint.
I mean, the lyrical content is absolutely gross, but like,
oh, it's horrific.
Yeah, it's very horrific.
It's kind of like Mortal Kombat, where it's so over the top. It's actually kind of funny.
Like, I think that's the exact way to put it. It's a Mortal Kombat over the top funny.
Yeah, because it's just so ridiculous.
But some of that, I'm still. I mean. Like I've said many times, like I just have
your playlist.
I have my playlist and I just kind of listen to it over. But I don't know, these days, just because the holidays are coming around, like there's a lot of holiday music out, and Michelle and I were part of a night of thanks for Ecclesia, so we were listening to a lot of that music. Okay. So a lot more worship music this time around.
Oh, cool.
Worship music in the midst of that other music.
It balances out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Jay's been every time. So we got Jay a new car, which is kind of fun. But whenever we drive around now she's like, "This is my car. I'm picking the music." Because whenever we got into my car, my Bluetooth would instantly connect to my phone.
Mm-hmm.
So we listened to my music whenever we drove around. Now she's like, hers doesn't have the Bluetooth, so it has an aux cable. So I don't never get to listen to my music in her car now.
Payback. That's what that's
it's
called.
good because she plays like Phil Wickham and a bunch of worship artists and stuff. Like I think it's good for my soul to do that instead of just hearing someone go for hours and hours on end. So I like it.
Some would disagree with that, Ben.
I actually said it and then I disagreed with it as it was coming out. So don't worry about it. So yeah, worship music is good. So I can get on board with that.
Yeah, it is good.
So
what were we talking about before the podcast?
Black Friday.
Black Friday. Was that what we were talking about? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you have more? Well, then, I remember talking about something, and they're like, "Let's start the podcast and have this discussion," and then I forgot what we were talking about.
Yeah. Because sometimes it's fun to have these conversations just on the podcast.
Right. Just so you guys know, it's like, hey, you're human too.
Yep. And we just generally chat about things.
Right.
Oh, by the way, I've already brought this up, but I'll bring it up again. I beat the new Pokemon game.
Wait, you beat it already?
I beat it already.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I haven't done every single thing there is to do. I haven't 100%ed it or anything, but I've gone through the main story, the whole main quest line, the gym challenge, beat the main champion guy.
How many hours of gameplay is that?
I think total as of right now it's 40.
Okay, that's a pretty good size.
But that's with me catching the bare minimum Pokemon that I can get all the way through with.
Right.
I haven't nearly grinded like some other people would to try and catch all the Pokemon along the way. I spend a lot of time just kind of trying to build up the ultimate team and then just destroying Pokemon left and right just to get them leveled up.
Right.
And so now I have this super intense team that just one-shots everybody, which is great. But, now I have to go back and grind through to try and find all the Pokemon and, try and catch every single one of them.
And they don't even have every single, I think that's honestly a pretty lame marketing stunt where they say they're going to divide the Pokédex in half and then release 2 games. So if you want to catch them all, you have to buy them both, which is, I think it's scuzzy, but...
Is that what they did?
Yeah.
I thought they just...
Well, I think it might just be there's a couple legendaries or something like that, but you still can't catch them all unless you bought both games.
I didn't even think that was the case.
Oh, there was a big scandal about it not too long ago, and then everyone bought it anyway, so it doesn't matter.
From what I
Outrage
understood...
on the internet doesn't matter unless you vote with your wallet.
Yeah, true. From what I understood, they divided the Pokédex in half, and that's what you got in both games.
Was that
I
it?
think that's
you get
it.
the same half of
you
the
get the
Pokédex.
Same, I mean, there's a couple exclusive for each one.
Right. Otherwise, what would be the point?
Yeah, other than the legendary, you can get the different legendary in the other one, which is pretty normal. But yeah, there's only a set number, which, I've already admitted that I'm not the person that played Pokemon games from the very beginning.
Yeah, from Pokemon Leaf Green.
Type
stuff.
Pokemon Yellow or whatever. I never played any of those. This is technically my very first, and this might be a sin to many people, but this is my very first main actual Pokemon game, other than Pokemon Go.
I wasn't allowed to play Pokemon as a kid.
Yeah, you told me about that.
Yeah, so I love my parents now.
Now.
No, I loved them then too, but they were very much me and Isaac were the experiment children, the oldest ones. So they'd try a bunch of stuff, and then they're like, "Wait, you need therapy for that now." So my little brother and sister are coming out a little more well-adjusted.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
No, it's good. I love you, Mom. Please don't get mad at me. She listens to the podcast. So.
Oh, cool. Much love, much love.
I know. Theo, if you're there. Hi, Theo.
Hi, Theo.
Well, she sent me a text, and she said, so they have a border collie named Theo. And he's a good boy. He's a neurotic mess because he's a border collie, and he needs the ball. All the time. Ball is life. If you aren't playing, he'll bring you a ball.
Ball is life.
Ball is life. I mean, it's usually a gross, dirty tennis ball, but he's a baller.
He's a baller.
He brings you a ball, you throw the ball, he brings the ball back, and you just kind of keep doing that in perpetuity until
that's awesome.
Trumpet sounds and Christ returns. He will just go and go and go and go. But he loves me. I don't know why. Because I'm never at my parents' house, but that dog loves me for whatever reason. and I'll come home and he'll just like he'll freak out, like he'll get all snuggly and cuddly with me, which he doesn't do with anyone else. And so my mom, she sent me pics and she's like, I was listening to your podcast while I was doing my neck exercises, and then and Theo came up and he's like, and he heard your voice and he was like, whoa, it's Ben. Oh my gosh,
where's Ben?
It's Ben. So now I have to throw in like a little Easter egg. So if Theo's listening to my podcast again, he'll get all excited.
Nice.
So
nice.
Okay.
Right
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. So we've burned 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do it. So this is going to be kind of a super, super intense episode. So we gotta get started.
Yeah, we gotta get going. So today, this is going to be our last podcast talking about the Exodus story.
Right.
We've kind of been diving into that for however long now. I think we're on our fifth episode.
This is our fifth episode.
Fifth episode related to the Exodus story. I'm sure everybody would like us to move on to other things.
Well, I mean, yes, yeah. I mean, but also from a teaching moment, there is not a single story in the Bible that quite sums up the human condition quite like this one.
Oh,
I think,
yeah.
in my opinion, like,
yeah, absolutely.
There's and what this did for, like, and God always like from like, you have people in the New Testament saying it's like the God that brought you out of Egypt kind of thing. Like, this is a very key moment in Israelite history. So this last episode is going to be kind of like a meta narrative talking about one specific issue that comes up. And that's the issue of Pharaoh and his hardened heart. Because Pharaoh, like it says a couple times in the Bible, it says, like, God hardened Pharaoh's heart, or Pharaoh hardened his heart, or something like that. And then that brings up a lot of questions. So we're going to address that because I think it's fair when we look at something, especially when it may seem unfair.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, oh, if God hardened Pharaoh's heart, aren't all the plagues his fault? Or aren't all of the, like, the death, like, especially the death of the firstborn?
Yeah.
Is that his fault? And the answer is no. And then we're going to dig into that. So just to get people really intrigued. So anyway, do you have anything? Do you have? I don't even know how to start this conversation.
I'll go ahead and start.
Okay.
So, like, I guess one good thing for us to do right away is to kind of, like, we want to surmise the whole. We want to give kind of a summary of, like, what the dealio was, and, like, we kind of already done this in passing, like, throughout the past few episodes. Every time we talk about, a new plague, there's always this little bit of scripture that's just right there saying something along the lines of, and God hardened Pharaoh's heart, or Pharaoh hardened his heart. And there's always this touch and go between those two things.
Right.
And it's like, oh, God can't say that. God farted Pharaoh's heart. God farted and there was hail.
I'm sure there's probably a pastor somewhere just hearing that and just going
and
cringing so hard.
Like, oh man, those guys!
How the millennials have fallen.
Yep,
ruining church.
Yep.
Look at them go.
Look at them. Look at them go. Anyway, so there's this always this big touch and go between Pharaoh hardening his own heart and God hardening the heart of Pharaoh, and
right.
There's been this long-standing debate as to, well, which one came first? It's like the chicken and the egg. Did the chicken come first? The egg came first. The chicken came first.
Well, I mean, let me kind of dig into that statement a little bit because it may not make a whole lot of sense. So basically, if we believe that God is omniscient, is that the word I'm looking for? God knows everything. God knows what we think. God knows what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Does that make him responsible for it? And some people would argue yes. But there's a verse, and do you remember the exact verse off the top of your head when Pharaoh's talking to or God is talking to Moses, and he says, "Now Pharaoh's not going to let you go." Like it's early, it's before any of the plagues take place.
Yeah, that's in Exodus chapter 4.
Yeah, do you want to go ahead and read that?
Yeah,
really quick?
Yeah. So Exodus chapter 4, 21 through 23, it says, "And the Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you do before Pharaoh all the miracles that I have put in your power. But I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn son, and I say to you, my son, Go that he may serve me. If you refuse to let him go, behold, I will kill your firstborn son. Was that the one?
Yeah, so there's that one, and there's one that's a little bit before it. So, because that one says, God says, I will harden Pharaoh's heart. And then there's the one before that where God says, Pharaoh's a lost cause, man. Like,
Are you talking about the one in chapter 6?
It might be the one in chapter... What's the one in chapter 6? I'm trying to remember, because we had this big, long conversation over coffee, and I didn't write down any of these.
Yeah.
Because I had this whole thought process I kind of wanted to piece together throughout the episode, and then I didn't write down which verses were what.
So, like in chapter 6, but the Lord said to Moses, now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh, for with a strong hand he will send them out, and with a strong hand he will drive them out of his land.
So the Hebrew word there, I don't remember the exact word, but what it means is the strong... Like, it's kind of like a superlative. I think it's like it's like only by coercion, like, will Pharaoh send you out. The only way I'm going to make him send you out is that, because at this point he's so stubborn, he's so pig-headed. The only way he will send you out or send you away is if I coerce him to do it. Someone has to basically like beat him over the head with a stick before he'll listen, kind of thing. So there's kind of so that kind of like those two verses kind of illustrate the duality of like, this is what God actually has to do mechanically now to get the Israelites to leave, get Pharaoh to let the Israelites leave without, like, because if the Israelites just tried to leave, Pharaoh probably would have come and murdered them all. So there has to be a way so Pharaoh has to let them go. Like, that's kind of like point number one. Like, Pharaoh has to actually let the Israelites go because they can't escape. And then God's like, and point number two that I want to make is that Pharaoh is a super stubborn individual. Pharaoh is pig-headed. He is impulsive. He is angry. He doesn't. And one of the things I read this blog by the Bible Project that I think pointed out very well. Pharaoh is basically what happens if a human completely falls to sin. Yeah. Someone who is so caught up in his own desires and his own wants to the point of that it's to the detriment of literally every person around him. Like, he really, like, we cannot stress enough how evil of a person Pharaoh was. Yeah. So like, I don't know. So that's kind of my point I wanted to make. I don't know if you wanted to kind of expound on that, but
yeah, for sure. So yeah, like Ben said, this is kind of like the picture of like the ultimate someone who is so steeped in their sin, someone who's so steeped in their own self-idolatry that it takes a strong hand, it takes a coercive hand to get him to bend, basically, and to get him to bow, in a sense. And another interesting part about this, I mean, since there's this duality of hardening of hearts, not only is Pharaoh like seeped in his own hardness, but God makes that hardness even harder.
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't think the one thing I think we agreed on. So the first thing that we did is we sat down, because me and Levi disagree on the mechanics of like our free will and how much of that we have, whether or not God ordains everything versus whether or not we have the decision to choose, even though God kind of knows everything in advance. So what we did is we sat down and we're like, okay, what do we agree on? What are the three main tenets that we agree on? Number one is, you have these written down.
So number one, God wanted to keep his promises by freeing his people. Yeah. Like, absolutely point blank. That was the first thing that God wanted to do in this whole instance. Whether or not, regardless of the mechanism of hardening of hearts and who was responsible for that, like, that was the ultimate purpose, was God wanted to keep his promises to Abraham, to his descendants, by freeing his people from slavery. Right. Like, that was number one. And then number two, God was passing judgment on the Egyptians. You want to talk about that?
Right. Yeah. No, this is I think one of the things that can be hardest to stomach in this day and age is the very idea of God passing judgment at all, and that's one of the things where people look at that and they go, wow, like, these plagues were really nasty. And I'm like, well, the Egyptians committed genocide and abuse, and it's slavery. Like, this isn't like what's the word, like what's the, like, when you sell yourself as a something servitude.
Willful
why am I indentured servitude?
Oh yeah.
This isn't indentured servitude. This is like full on. We conquered your people.
Yeah.
You work until you die.
Yeah.
Slavery. Like
this is forced slavery.
Like it's like chattel slavery. Like
yeah.
so they're we have to really like hammer in on the point that like from a purely judgmental standpoint, the Egyptians deserved it.
Yeah.
And that sounds really harsh. And that doesn't, I'm not saying that from a pillar of moral superiority.
Absolutely
either.
not.
Like, I'm not saying it's like, because that is the point of the human condition, is that we all deserve death because of the sins that we've committed.
Yeah.
But the Egyptians, it was very easy to look at that, and God's like, you have tormented and you have destroyed my people. You know, and the whole my people thing comes back to a promise that he made to one man Abraham back in Genesis.
Mm-hmm. Which we'll get into that.
Yeah, which we'll get into that a little bit. But we really, really have to hammer in on the point. It's like the Egyptians, this is judgment.
Mm-hmm.
This is just them sitting in front of the judge's seat in court,
mm-hmm.
and God saying, this is your punishment for the evil that you have committed.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. You have been weighed and found wanting.
As a society, right.
Yeah.
So.
And then point number one of agreement, God wanted to keep his promises by freeing his people. Point number two, God was passing judgment on the Egyptians. And then point number three, God wanted to display his power and glory to the surrounding nations.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an important one because like this is we kind of already brought this up a few times here and there, but like we kind of want to hammer this home as another point of agreement that the whole point of the story and the whole point of this narrative is that God has to display himself as the most powerful God, and truthfully, as the only God.
Right.
You know, when he says something like, I am the Lord, that doesn't just mean, you know, I am one of many. That means I am the only one.
Yeah. It's like, and nothing else will stand before me. And this is just another situation where God's big picture is more important than what we look at as like individual events, because like I think we take our lives and look at these individual events like, oh wow, this is bad, but then like the big picture, we look at we'll get into this next, but like the Canaanite, like when the Israelites go through and conquer Canaan, they're like the God getting them out of Egypt is a huge part of that.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
So because of the reputation that God basically built himself in the eyes of the other people, like in the immediate area, like it was there was purpose behind that.
Yeah. So. The world at the time, everybody had their own gods and everybody believed that their gods were more powerful. And, you know, everybody was like, oh yeah, I'm going to worship my God because he's the most powerful God. Well, God kind of had to establish a street cred, if you could put it that way.
Right.
And be like, no, I'm the most powerful God. And this is why.
Well, not only that, but it's like, it always started with, I'm going to destroy your God because they don't exist.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like there's a long running theme of that's how God operated in this day and age, is he basically just is like, your gods are nothing.
Yeah.
Like I'm the only God, like, because I think like we still do this today, but our gods aren't like, you know, statues of other, I mean, they are like,
they're not images of things.
They're not images of things. They are things.
Yeah, they're things.
They're money, they're power, they're sex, they're, you know, insert thing, right? You know, like we all kind of have something like that. And the truth is, if we want to really follow God, and if we need to see God, sometimes that needs to be taken away.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, and that's coming from the whole thing where even if it hurts in the moment, or even if it's painful in the moment, the big picture matters so much more than just this, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So those are the points we agree on. And we're not going to argue the mechanics. We're not going to argue what's going on behind the scenes, because the truth is we don't really know.
Yeah. At the end of the day, both Ben and I, even though we can have our differences on like how heart hardening actually works and, you know, God's whole dealings with our will and whatnot, and whether it's free, like, at the end of the day, that's not the most important thing, and we don't want to turn this into a grand theological debate. Because two things, that'll be super boring to listen to. Yes. And a lot of people don't really care about that. Yeah. So, I mean, they just want to get to the blood and guts. Pretty much. And that's kind of the point of the podcast. Yeah, like, so I'm trying to keep it like fairly, well, I'm not going to say light because it's going to be kind of gross and gruesome. It's going to be heavy. But I'm also like, this isn't going to sound like a seminary class either. Exactly. So Like, we don't want we tried to do an episode that was somewhat like a seminary class, and it was freaking boring.
Oh, it was so boring. It was like boring doing the episode.
Yeah, and you could tell. We may or may not release it.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to go through it and see if I can splice it into something a little more palatable, but it's like drier than I don't know. I was trying to come up with a joke, but I couldn't.
It wasn't even that metal.
No.
Too. Like, it was literally a seminary class.
Hello, I'm Professor Lubbock I'm going to go talk about King Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
And then he drones on for 2 hours, and you're just like, kill me now. That's what it was like.
Yeah, so we definitely don't want this episode to be that.
Yeah, so it's going to be kind of hard to do that, so I'll slap myself if it starts to turn into a theological exposition anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, those are our points of agreement. Like, we 100% agree that that's like the overall reasoning for this whole story and for the whole Pharaoh's hardness and all that stuff.
Right.
You know, regardless of the mechanic, that's where we land and that's where we agree on. And that's more important at the end of the day.
Right.
Especially since, like, there's a lot of Christians these days that literally, like, divide and don't talk to each other because they disagree on this issue, and that's a darn shame.
Yeah, because again, it's not about, because here's the reality is, like, it doesn't matter how Pharaoh's heart was hardened. You know, I definitely lean more on side, just to kind of like give a little backstory. I definitely lean more on the side of the camp of, like, God just kind of poked Pharaoh. And Pharaoh did all this to himself, because of his own trajectory, you know, already. So I don't know. I wouldn't say. I'm definitely in the camp where I think that without intervention from God, Pharaoh still wouldn't have let the Israelites go. But then that begs the question of, like, what was the point of the interference from God anyway? But
yeah, and then I'm on the other side of, you know, predestination, that we don't actually have free will and all that good fun stuff.
Yeah,
you can insert all the
Calvinist jokes.
Yep. Insert Calvinist joke here. But yeah, so we definitely disagree on that. But at the end of the day, Ben, you're my bro.
You're my bro. We're gonna go throw down later.
Yeah.
At Best Buy.
Best Buy.
You're gonna go to a mosh pit and get prizes. So, but the point of the matter here is God's will was done.
Yes.
Right. And that's what we can agree.
Absolutely.
And that we can still agree that God's will was good.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's the ultimate takeaway here. Even though it may not seem like it at first. So the first thing that we're looking at is, and I'm going to kind of read off of this a little bit from a blog post from the Bible Project, because the Bible Project is my favorite.
Oh, Bible Project's good stuff.
So the whole things of Pharaoh's heart become hard. So we had, like, in the beginning where God's like, hey, Pharaoh's already, you know, basically, for lack of a better word, a stubborn ass. I say this in a Balaam's ass sort of way.
Yeah. He's a stubborn Balaam donkey.
He's a donkey. He is,
Donkey.
So, and then we have mentions like, but then I will harden his heart to let, you know, to kind of further this, further my plan, you know. But then there's also the times it's mentioned in the plagues then. So it's never mentioned until the 7th plague. Until then, it's most often translated as Pharaoh's heart was hardened. Pharaoh's heart, like, he hardened his own heart. Pharaoh's heart was hard. Like, basically insinuating that this was the condition of his heart already, and God didn't have to do anything.
Were you saying that the heart hardening wasn't mentioned until the 7th plague?
No, like God, like the confusion doesn't start until the 7th plague, because that's the first time when it's
kind of
commonly translated as God hardened Pharaoh's heart.
Gotcha.
So, and actually, the Bible Project, they actually agree. They're actually more on my side.
I know they are.
So
I am fully aware of that.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that they still don't have. I love the Bible Project.
Oh yeah, I do too.
If you like the Bible, if you like really, if this stuff interests you and you kind of want to hear more about it from a theological standpoint, Bible Project is awesome. They make a lot of this super palatable.
Oh yeah, it's really good. And, like, yeah, there are those various things that I disagree with, but at the end of the day, like, I think the Bible Project is a great project, and it's a great Lord's work happening. And all in all, like, I love the narration they do over the, you know, the videos and the blog posts. Like, seriously good stuff.
It's good stuff. Yeah. So it's like, and some people may disagree with this, but this sums up my position pretty succinctly. So I'm just going to read this. Interestingly, the seventh plague of hail, we see Pharaoh harden his own heart, but afterward, the narrator uses the ambiguous verb became hard to describe it. That means all the other uses of the ambiguous verb in 1, 3, and 5 do not imply that God didn't harden Pharaoh's heart, but just the opposite. So basically, he's like, due to the, like, using the pattern already set by using the same, because it uses the same word as it did in the first 7, but for whatever reason they translated it differently this time. Maybe it was just a verbal context thing. I don't speak Hebrew. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to like try to say that I know, because I don't. So I'm not a linguist. But there's a lot of truth to the fact where they use the same word to say Pharaoh's heart was hard, Pharaoh's heart was hardened. If they don't, there's not like a subject and an object of that particular action word. So they kind of take it as like in the original Hebrew, it was not intended to be said that God specifically hardened Pharaoh's heart. But that also takes into account the fact where God even says at the very beginning, hey, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart. So there's some...
Yeah, like there's semantics that could be dived into,
right?
But at the end of the day, it's like, what do those semantics point to? And that's where the disagreement lies,
right?
Because there's well written books on both sides, and it's hard to navigate at times, and even I who land on a certain side find it hard to navigate,
right?
But at the end of the day, like we're saying, like there's points of agreement, and like sticking to those points of agreement is good,
right? So yeah. Anyway, so sorry, that was kind of a segue, but yeah. So yeah, okay. So I don't know. I'm just kind of meandering now.
No, for sure, it's all good. So like so we highlighted the points of agreement, but let's get into some questions that we feel that some of you may have, and these are some questions that even we have. You know, this is a challenging subject for us as well.
Right.
You know, like this isn't like, oh yeah, God hardened Pharaoh's heart, Pharaoh hardened his heart, whatever.
Yeah.
Plagues killed people, whatever. Like that's totally not us, and we are just as shocked that all this happened as you may be.
Well, yeah, because it's like, just because that we're coming at this, it's like, I still believe these are factual events.
Yes.
I still believe that things are that, and I'm still trying to reconcile all of this with who God says he is later in the Bible, right? Like that's a very true thing. And just because we're comfortable talking about it doesn't mean that we have all the answers there,
Yeah. Or that it doesn't really impact us. Like, it impacts us.
No,
and it's hard to swallow some of these things.
Right. Yeah. So the first question that we kind of came up with, and if you have more questions, let us know, and we'll try to see if we can tackle those later. Like we'd be more than happy to kind of engage some people on this.
I'll say this right here. When this episode goes live, I'll post those questions on the Facebook chat, and I'll post it everywhere. Okay. And then we'll try and get as many responses as possible. Okay. But go listen to this episode. If you have any questions, go to those places and ask the questions. And our intention is to take those questions and put them into another episode. Right. Or depending on, the question, we could probably just answer it right there.
Right.
So we'll see.
Yeah. So first question, in light of the fact that God wanted to display his power and glory to the surrounding nations, was it really necessary for God to prolong the process through slavery, plagues, and death in order to accomplish his goal?
Yeah, so was this whole Exodus story even necessary?
Was it even necessary? Because God says, like, God told him, it's like, you're going to be enslaved for 400 years,
Yeah, that was said back in Genesis.
That was back in Genesis. Yeah. But then after the 400 years of slavery, why didn't God just teleport the Israelites out, Like why was this necessary? Why did God have to do all of this?
Yeah. And it's a fun question, because it kind of it's like, why was it all necessary? And the ultimate answer is, we don't know.
We don't know.
It's his grand will that is being accomplished here, and at the end of the day, he's going to accomplish his will as the supreme authority in the universe. Right. But thankfully, the Lord is gracious, and he reveals to us various, hints and various things. He says things that basically tell us why. And like, one of the biggest reasons, of course, for this is that he desires to pass judgment on Egypt. Like that judgment has to happen. Despite the fact that he knew that slavery was going to happen at the hands of the Egyptians, the Egyptians still need to be judged for that, you know, and kind of like what you were saying, like God is omniscient. He knows that was going to happen, and there is judgment to be done for that.
And regardless of the free will versus like predestination argument, that's aside from that. The one other thing that we both agree on is when we sin, when evil is done, it is our fault.
Yeah.
It is not God's fault. It is 100% our fault when evil is done, because we are breaking from the will of God and what he set out for us, you know? And that may sound kind of contradictory to a lot of people. If you want to talk to Levi about that, go for it. But that's something that we do agree on, is like the judgment had to happen because we agree that the evil was the fault of the Egyptians, because that seems really cruel. If God's like, hey, I'm going to write it in the story that you're going to do slavery, and now I'm going to punish you for it. Ha. You know, suck it. Like that's not God. That's not how he operates. Like our sin is our fault.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
and not only that, but like this is one of those stories that anybody who has been wronged, or anybody that feels that there's a lack of justice in the world, you know, even when it comes to modern day slavery or past slavery, or even just modern day sins and all that, like God is a God who judges the wicked. He judges those who commit sin, and judgment will come. Like if ever you've doubted that judgment will come, like, no, it will come. And even though it took 400 years for it to come to the Egyptians, it did come.
Right.
You know, and that ultimately shows the patience of God, that he waited that long.
Right. But it also highlights the reality that our life isn't it. Because often this judgment doesn't come in this lifetime. Yeah. Because I know a lot of horrible people that are extremely successful by today's standards, and it sucks.
Yeah.
Because you want to be mad. You're like, wow, why are you happy? You know, why are you like stuff like that? You know, and it's like, God, why don't you smite him? You know. Yeah. And the truth is, because he'd have to smite us too. Because,
exactly.
Like, so
that's so good.
I know. Yeah. So we can get into that a little bit more. Like our condition is brutal. Yeah. Like if we want to get in, we could probably do an entire series of episodes on the human condition. But
and you essentially become a Pharisee the minute you point at someone else's sin
and say, you deserve to die you need to be judged for this.
Yeah. And then the angel comes down to you and says, what about you, homie?
What about you, homie? What about that time, you know, you made a passing comment at that girl at work? What about that time that you like thought poorly about someone else? What about that time that you hit someone else's car and drove away?
Yeah.
You know, like
whatever it may be.
Yeah. It's
you
like
keyed somebody's Tesla or whatever.
Did you see that video?
I did.
Oh yeah. Anyway, but it's like, you know, our modern day sins may seem, the reality is some of our modern day sins are honestly pretty tame in comparison to, you know, chattel slavery. But like,
and they can appear tame, and I think that's the biggest deception, is that sin doesn't seem as bad when we're the ones doing it, but it's the worst thing in the world when other people do it.
Right.
And we're shocked that those people can get away with it, and not so shocked when we get away with it.
Right, exactly.
It's all a part of we're all messed up, man.
We're all messed up, man. That's how we operate. Yeah. So
if ever you want to get a real glimpse of what your sin looks like to everyone else, look at children who basically just without any kind of social worry, just do what they want to do, cry about what they want to cry about. And
kids are selfish butts, dude.
Yes, they are.
It's like all they care about is themselves, and it's like, and that is the perfect prime example. It's like people are not good. I think there's kind of this unspoken idea going around that people are basically good, and when faced with the decision to do the right thing or be selfish, they'll do the right thing, and they often won't.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, not to be out there. Like, there are some people that are out there that actually legitimately will want to do the right thing. Like, that I'm not trying to discount that. Yeah. I'm not saying that like humans are entirely, utterly depraved and will only do evil when left up to their own devices. I mean, at best, I would say that without the framework of God, people that do good things, there's usually an undercurrent of selfish, like self-righteousness involved.
Yeah.
But we're not going to go down that road.
Yeah.
I'm not going to like judge people's motivations and stuff like that.
Yeah. That's stuff that only God can judge.
Right.
Like he judges motivation. He judges the heart.
And I was like talking about like, hey, you'll be a Pharisee. It's like, hey, by the way, I'm judging people. No, I'm not judging people.
Yeah.
This has been my experience. I'm just kind of talking at it. And from my own heart, you know, when I do a good thing, apart from God, usually it's because I wanted to impress a girl.
Yeah.
Gotta be straight up.
Yeah.
Or impress someone else, you know.
Yeah. Or feel good about myself.
Or feel good about myself, right? It's like it was always selfishly motivated in the end.
Yeah.
So ultimately, was it necessary for God to prolong? Were the plagues even necessary? Yes.
Yes.
Because God needed to pass judgment.
Yes.
On the Egyptians for their evil, you know, the evil of their society.
Yeah.
So
now I want to add one more thing on that before we go to the next one, and that is that it was actually, let's see, hold on. Actually, no, I'll get into this next question.
Okay.
Because the next question kind of relates a little bit. But so the next question is, if God could harden Pharaoh's heart, why didn't he soften it to let the people go so as to avoid so much destruction? So another valid question, and another one like, why couldn't he just make it easier? You know, and again, like we mentioned, because judgment needed to happen.
Right.
But another part of that is that even though it may seem weird, it's actually more gracious of God to reveal himself to a people than to not reveal himself. And that may seem weird, but ultimately at the end of the day, if you never knew about God and God never revealed himself to the Egyptians, they would be left in their own idolatry.
Right.
Basically, they would be left.
Their idolatry would still be there. Like there was a very, because it wasn't just about Pharaoh. You know, like I mean, there was a very key point of that, and I think God often will do that to leaders. You know, like he did it with King David. He did it with Pharaoh. He did it with Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
He'll often affect leaders in this way because leaders can affect the most change. Right. Yeah. Like from a worldly standpoint, it's very efficient of God. There's my engineer speak coming out. To
it's
reveal,
very performant.
To feel very like, or to reveal himself to leaders, because leaders can affect change.
Yes.
Unlike anyone else. Like, not that you can't, but you know, like. I'm right. I'm not going to go there. No, I'm not going to go there.
There's a reason why the Bible tells us to pray for kings and to pray for those in authority.
Right.
I think that's in 2 Timothy. And in a real sense, that means to pray for your governors, pray for your president, you know, even though you may not like them. Pray for those in authority, because they are the ones that can bring about the most change quickly. You know, and if you want change, if you want good things to happen in your lifetime, pray that the leaders and those in a power and authority can hear the voice of God in those moments. Like that is a very real thing.
Right.
And so, like in a sense, God will always, tend to work through leaders in that way. But this whole ordeal wasn't just for Pharaoh. It was for the entirety of Egypt to know who the Lord is.
Right. And it says...
to know who the false idols are.
Right. And it said by the end of that, like I think it was in Plague 9 or 10, that the officials thought very highly of Moses, even after all the plagues, like they're like, they aren't looking at him with dread. They aren't looking at, like, if other people in the court are like, yeah, this guy's legit. It's like, Pharaoh, you need to let these people go. Like, their God's not messing around, basically. Yeah. Like, everyone was honestly on Moses' team. And to be fair, we don't really know how many people in the Egyptians still, like, for all we know, there may have been a lot, like thousands and thousands of people in the Egyptian society that turned to worship God as part of this.
And there were actually a large number of Egyptians that left Egypt to go live with the people of Israel as their, what would you say it before, as the
indentured servants.
Indentured servants.
I think there might have been plenty of people that went with just to go with, because they're like, this is, and that's the sort of the graciousness of God is like, when people are like, I just want to, like, I want to be an Israelite, I want to follow this God, and he's like, okay.
Yeah. God didn't exclude the Egyptians
just because they were
following.
Egyptians, that would be super lame. If he's like, well, you weren't descended from Abraham, so yeah.
I mean, there was a covenant sense in which you did need to be descended from Abraham to be considered an Israelite, but like a lot of the laws from Exodus and Deuteronomy and Leviticus talk about the sojourner, talk about the person who has come alongside Israel and has decided to follow their God. Right. And many of the Egyptians were that person. They were now the sojourner.
Well, and it very explicitly says is like, these people treat them as you would any other Israelite. Because it's like, effectively, like in this life, they're your neighbors. These are the people that you're doing life with.
Yeah.
So even though they're not descended from Abraham, they're still following the same God.
Exactly.
So like that's it's not just God taking a stick and beating Egypt across the face with it, which, well, it is a little bit in a small way, but the reality is it's like God didn't soften Pharaoh's heart because nothing good would have come out of that.
Yeah, they would have still been stuck in their idolatry and would have been judged for it later. In other words, it's like in the book of Hebrews, chapter 12 says that God chastises those that he loves. And it's actually a gracious thing for God to chastise people and in order to reveal himself.
No, and it sounds counterproductive, but if you were ever spanked as a child, right? Like, it sucks in the moment. It's like, why are you hitting me?
Yeah.
But I now suffer from the condition of respect for people.
Yeah.
And learning to, like, I mean, like, it doesn't necessarily be spanked, but any sort of punishment when someone takes away something. Like, a really easy example of this is just like, say someone's getting into a lot of trouble with their phone, and then their parents are like, well, you don't get to have your phone.
Yeah.
I'm taking this away because you're using it for your own harm. I'm going to take this away. In a very cosmic sort of way, God's looking at, it's like, you're using your gods to get into trouble. Yeah. Therefore, I'm taking away your gods.
Yeah.
And the only way for that to actually stick, because here's the reality, is that gods don't really exist to begin with. So they're like, the only way to really, really, I think, hammer it in for the Egyptians is to basically prove that their gods don't exist by dismantling them in very visible, flashy, violent ways.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of truth to the fact that it's like, if God wanted to actually reveal himself to the Egyptians, he had to take away the things that were blocking their view.
Yeah. It was very gracious for him to do that. And I know that
sounds so weird. It sounds so weird to say that.
But it actually was.
Yeah. In the long run, this was much better for the Egyptians than, their entire society being ultimately judged. And I think the Egyptians ended up being one of the longest running empires on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, they went from minus the 3000 BCs ish to, I want to say, the Ottoman Empire. Like, they were a world power for a long time. And and I'm not gonna go down the rabbit hole of maybe they were, they were God-fearing after this, and so God blessed them or whatever, because I don't even really know if there's anywhere. We don't really know.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of truth to the fact that sometimes God just that God has to do these big, scary, violent, visible things. It did the same thing with, back in episode 3 when we were talking about Elijah and the prophets of Baal, right?
Yep.
God, it had to be memorable. He had to basically tear Baal down.
Yep.
In the most visible way possible in order for the Israelites to listen.
Exactly.
Because they were so enamored with this view of Baal, it was blocking God, and he had to take that away before they could see him. So.
Yeah, pretty much. So, yeah. So that was pretty much why God didn't want to take the easy road and just soften Pharaoh's heart and be like, yep, let's just, kind of, let's wiggle them out.
Right.
There was a lot of grand purpose behind it, and still a lot of purpose that we don't understand.
Right.
There was probably way more things that accomplished than we could ever understand.
Right. I mean, a lot of this is we can kind of explain this to the best of our ability, but the truth is a lot of this we just don't really know.
Yeah. We only know what God has revealed.
Right. And it's and a lot of this may seem kind of cruel, but if we honestly, this may sound super trite and stupid and Christian-y, but you kind of just gotta have faith that God was in control. God thought God had the best in heart for the Egyptian people, in light of all these terrible plagues, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yep. That's what faith is at the end of the day. All right. So then number three question. Why did God choose Israel over Egypt in this situation? And was God basically playing favorites?
No, he was just keeping a promise.
Yeah, much so.
Well, we kind of answered that a little bit in the last one because he promised the Israelites that they'd get out at some point.
Yeah.
But then he did it in a way where the Egyptians would also be able to come to him if they wanted, if they listened to Moses. Because like Moses is like yelling at Pharaoh in a crowded court. Like it wasn't just like a closed doors meeting. So all this information was freely available for people, and they could act on it if they wanted.
Yeah.
And it says, it actually mentions a couple times where there were a lot of Egyptians that took precautions against the plagues because they believed Moses. They're like, yep, this God's not messing around. We're good. We're going to take our slaves out of the field. We're going to, I don't know. Maybe there were even Egyptians who participated in the Passover. I don't even know. And I don't know if there was. I don't think they didn't really mention it.
Yeah,
and I feel
it said that there was not one household in Egypt that didn't have a dead firstborn.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I think that was one that they didn't participate in. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like, and then to add a little bit more to that, yes, like Ben's right. Like, he was keeping a promise to Abraham. But another interesting part is to more address the question of, was God playing favorites? When we think of playing favorites, we ultimately think of it in the sense of like how people play favorites, how man plays favorites, like, like showing favoritism to the rich, to the wealthy, to the powerful, to the better looking, and that kind of favoritism. Whereas God, in various ways, he doesn't play favorites, rather he shows favor. And
he shows favor, and it doesn't, and in a way, like, this is like a little bit of my social justice part coming out. Like, I'm really not like super far down that road, but I think that there's a lot of truth to the fact that's like, look, sometimes the people in power need to be taken down a notch, especially in this case, God, his shtick, has always been looking out for the downtrodden, looking out for the people on the bottom of the ladder. Yeah. So, and the Egyptians, like, look, their leader thought he was God, right? Yeah. Like, you can't really get more arrogant than that, And so, obviously, the only way that God would be able to address that is by basically going, no, you're not. You're not God. Check this out,
Yeah.
So I don't think you can even say it's playing favorites.
Yeah,
because
it's not playing favorites, and the reason why
it's not a level playing field at all for them.
Yeah,
like, it's 100% like just this wealthy, powerful nation oppressing the underdog.
Yeah,
and God going, no, I'm not going to stand for this anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So God was very much Robin Hood in that sense.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
In a weird way.
Yeah, in a weird sort of way.
But like to hone in on God keeping his promise, but also showing favor to Israel as a nation under Abraham. Like in Deuteronomy 7, verse 6 says, "For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for his treasured possession out of all the people who are on the face of the earth. It was not because you were more in number than any other people that the Lord has set his love on you and chose you, for you were the fewest of people. But it is because the Lord loves you and is keeping his oath that he swore to your fathers, that the Lord has brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery." Like, this was 100% on God, keeping his promise, rescuing them from slavery, and showing his favor to them in that sense.
Right. And I mean, that's one of those, another truth, and we can kind of push into this a little bit, but God always keeps, like, that's was one of his calling cards, is God, he's like, when I promise something, I'll keep it. I will keep that promise.
He's a promise keeper.
It may not happen, in your lifetime.
Or for 400 years.
Or for 400 years. It may not happen for the next, 10 generations, right?
Yeah.
But I will keep my promise eventually.
Yeah. God's timing is God's timing.
God's timing, and it's like, and that comes from an overinflated sense of self. And coming back to this whole full circle of the idea that our lives are not worth as much as we give them, do not have as much value as we attribute to them at all, by orders of magnitude.
Yeah.
Like, and having to understand this idea of like I guess if you look at our life and say this is all there is, it's really hard to not, because it's like, this is all we have. But the truth is, like, I think the work that we do matter. Like the idea, like, some people look at like a missionary, or like there's a kid, or like there's a woman who is like sharing, like there's hundreds of stories like this, especially over in like poorer countries, where someone will be sharing their faith. They're like, they became a Christian, they got so excited to share their faith, and then they get murdered for it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that was a waste of their life. And
Yeah.
it goes,
That was quick.
Maybe it wasn't, you
Yeah.
know? Like, because their story, the legacy, the work they did, the ways that they love people on this planet echoes far more than just their life. You know, I don't think our life matters. It's what we do, you know, the parts of us that last for 400 years. You know?
Yeah. It's the grand scheme of things, and like we make our lives seem much more important than they are, but really we're more just cogs in the grand machine,
right?
You know,
yeah.
And sure, we play a huge part in that, but like it's not as big of a part as we think.
Yeah, like we aren't as important as we think we are.
Yeah.
Which I think when we accept that, it's a lot easier to stomach a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, all right, our final question. And we kind of answered this already, but why did God wait 400 years?
So I feel like there's a couple aspects to this, but like the first one is what we've already mentioned, is that, you know, God had his timing. You know, the reason for 400 years was that there came an appropriate, perfect time for him to execute his judgment on Egypt,
right,
and to rescue his people at that specific time. And also just the fact that that's the time period that Moses was born, and God wanted to use Moses as the agent of his powerful works, if we can put it that way. You know, sure, God could have made Moses, you know, born many years before he was, but this is another interesting thing, without going on too far of a tangent, but like we often think, well, why didn't God just do something insanely miraculous to make this situation different? And honestly, I think God likes to operate in the norm of things. He doesn't always have to bend reality to accomplish his goals.
Well, I mean, if you actually look at the like the timeline of a lot of the Bible stories you see, the reality is the vast majority of Israelites lived and died without ever seeing any sort of these miraculous signs from God.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you'll see something happen every 100, 200, 400 years, and that's it. Like every once in a while, God will do something grandiose and amazing and fantastic, but the vast majority of people just would never see him operate that way.
Yeah. And it doesn't always operate. It doesn't always happen in like spectacular ways. Sometimes it just happens in the norm of life, you know, but we always anticipate God acting in the miraculous, but really when we read scripture, we see God always likes to act in the norm.
Yeah. He likes to, this is how I like to be, because I'm an engineer.
Yeah.
I view a part of the way that helps it make sense to me is I kind of view the universe as this giant machine that God designed. God is the ultimate designer. And he often, because he knows, and I know this because when you design something, you have this innate knowledge where you can kind of poke it and make it do things it's not the end user is supposed to see, but it's still within the functionality of the machine.
Yeah.
And it looks like you're like doing black magic when in reality you just kind of are manipulating it in ways that only you know how to do, you know, and
you engineered it that way.
Yeah. And you engineered it to do that. And way like that resonates so much with me, because I do that with stuff I design at work, where it's like, I build myself backdoors into stuff. I know how to, like if something's not behaving properly, I usually know exactly why, and I know what I need to do to fix it, even if it's not technically how it's supposed to operate in the strictest sense. So there's like this, just because I understand so intricately how it all works. And God's plan is kind of like that.
Yeah.
And in a certain degree, you know.
Yeah. Like there are definitely times where he does miraculous things outside of the natural order of things to accomplish his will. And those do happen. But to always expect him to do that, that's not usually how God operates. He operates in the norm of life.
Yeah.
He operates in the norm of how he set up the machine.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Without making this sound like the Matrix.
Well, I mean, he also as people, like I've noticed when I'm not going to be one of those people who like vividly has vivid hallucinations and dreams, and I don't know, maybe people are like that. I've always been pretty skeptical of people that say they hear directly from God. But anecdotally, the way that I've heard God speak is usually through other people. It's through a song on the radio. It's for me happening to open my Bible and falling on. It's so stupid. I hate that
so
corny,
cheeseball.
so cheesy, corny Christian, right?
Mm-hmm.
But God operates. He communicates with us through people, through whatever means he has, like Bumblebee in the car radio and Transformers, right? He just like sometimes you just hear what you need to hear in a worldly sense, but it's what you needed to hear in a spiritual sense as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
and then like another part of why 400 years, and this was a specific part of what Scripture says, is that God was actually waiting for another nation or another group of people back in Genesis when he was promising to Abraham, that he's going to bless his descendants and that they're going to be in slavery for 400 years. He actually mentions why that 400 years had to be 400 years. And it was specifically because of the iniquity of the Amorites. The sin of the Amorites has not yet been complete.
Well, because then he goes and he uses the Israelites as a vehicle of judgment.
Yes.
On another sinful society.
Exactly.
So
and basically that right there shows God's ultimate patience. He gave these other nations a lot more time
to try to get their crap together, right?
Exactly.
And when it finally was like, you know what, this isn't. You guys are. People suck. That's probably the best way I can describe it. Is ultimately when you boil down to it, a lot of this, if you actually accept that people really suck and people really, at their core, really are evil and self-centered. Because I think this is really hard to stomach if you believe people are basically good. I mean, that's the truth. Is if you believe people are basically good, this looks cruel. Yeah. This looks awful. Yeah. And this looks mean. But the reality is, I don't think people are, and I don't think people are willing to admit that either.
Yeah, and that's not what Scripture says. And
no, I don't believe people. People are jerks, man.
Yeah.
Like I'm myself included. I'm not like I have total selfish tendencies. Like. All the time.
Yeah.
And I'm freely willing to admit that. And it's like, only by the grace of God am I willing to act out of, like, because there are plenty of times where it's like, I've wanted to tell people to screw off at work. I've wanted to be vicious. I wanted to be mean because they're encroaching on my me space or my me time or just making me uncomfortable or annoying me.
Yeah.
When in reality, I need to love those people, you know, like, I mean, and it's like, I'm not going out and I'm not, keying someone's Tesla or shooting them in the head because they annoy me, right?
Yeah.
Like, but at the same amount of time, my own heart is steeped into what I want for myself.
Yeah.
And not in what God needs me to do for other people. And that is sin. Deep down. You know?
That's a good way of putting it. Like,
it's the same disease that corrupted Pharaoh to that point.
Yeah.
And if I dive into that, if I accept that, if I turn to that and let that drive my decision making, I will turn into Pharaoh.
Yeah. It's like, what is the popular Disney mantra? Listen to your heart.
Please don't listen to your
heart.
Don't
listen to your heart. It'll deceive you in so many ways.
Yeah.
And make you do things that you wouldn't otherwise think you would be capable of.
Well, I mean, and I was like, just for, I know this is getting kind of long, but you know what, whatever.
We said it was going to be long.
It's going to be long. This is a good episode. I mean, the truth is, like, just for an anecdote, I mean, I got a raise last week, which is pretty cool.
Yeah?
Yeah. No,
awesome.
it is, right?
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I was so bitter because it wasn't as big as I wanted.
Oh.
It kind of showed me you are starting to really get sucked into money.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like I'm starting to be, I was like, I had kind of a come to Jesus moment. Like, so I'm visiting a therapist for a lot of reasons and it's not my parents. Just want to straighten that out. My parents are really awesome. So I apologize if you thought my parents were abusive or anything. My parents were great.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with I'm dealing with like super severe anxiety and stuff like that. Made college a nightmare, but like I was on the way home from therapy on Thursday and I was like, I kind of had a come to Jesus moment going like, you cared way too much about what people think of you. You want to look good. You want to make a lot of money. And kind of realizing how selfish I was being, like, and then I'm kind of realizing it's like, oh gosh, I don't want to be selfish, and like, and learning to this, like, hey, I need to be this is funny. This happens on the day before Thanksgiving, right? But it's like, it was a really good moment for me to sit down and be like, wow, God has really blessed me.
Yeah.
And not be selfish and wanting more, you know, and that's one of the reasons why I hate, why I'm trying to, I hate Black Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Because coming full circle, I hate Black Friday because I know I am the sort of person where if I let my sin and my selfishness get the best of me, I would trample someone for a TV.
Yeah.
Because I love things and I love money and I love having stuff.
Yep.
And then you just keep getting that and more, and you realize that it doesn't fill you up. It makes you empty and bitter.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's why we don't listen to our heart, because we're selfish, terrible people. Yep. And the sooner we accept that, the easier it is for us to look at this and be like, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And in a weird way, you can almost look at this and be like, wow, why didn't God do worse? You know,
especially because I know a lot of people who look at the chattel slavery that took place in America in the early 1800s, or late 17 to early 1800s and stuff like that. If we look at that as a society and go we deserved what the Egyptians got, you know, but we didn't.
Yeah.
As a culture, as a society. So it's why did God choose to do that to those Egyptians and not us in 1870 or whatever?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just, interesting thoughts and trying to understand why God does the certain thing. And honestly, here's the fun part is if we look at the actual timeline, if we say some country comes in and enslaves all the Americans and whatever. I'm not trying to compare us to the Egyptians. I don't think we're God's chosen people at all. Americans are.
Yeah, America's not God's chosen people.
We are
Don't
not.
say that.
Don't say that. But 400 years ago, that was 1619. The Pilgrims hadn't even shown up yet.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
400 years is a long time. That's ridiculous. When we actually sit and think about it, it's wow. But anyway. So yeah, so hopefully that kind of answered some questions. Hopefully that gave you more, honestly. Yeah. We want to hear your questions. We want to know what you guys have to say.
Yeah. So. And I'm going to go on to the socials and I'm going to post on there. First of all, go listen to the episode. And then if you have any more questions, post them on our Facebook page. You could post them on the Instagram picture, and then I usually do a Twitter post as well. So wherever you're active with us, or even on the YouTube video as well. That's another place. We'll just kind of keep an eye out on all those places.
On the average 1 or 2 views we get on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's not the platform of choice for a lot of people.
No. And I mean, to be honest, most of our viewership is not on YouTube.
No, it's not.
I mostly just put it there just to kind of cover all bases.
Just so it's there.
Yeah. Because I know a lot of people who don't have a podcast app installed, but they have YouTube.
Or if they don't have Spotify or Google Play.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I just kind of like to cover all bases. Yeah. It's free. And I don't even think we're monetizing either.
No.
So
we don't make enough money to monetize. If we have a subscriber and we put ads on our videos, that's so scuzzy.
I know. Gosh. Yeah.
So
I'm gonna go make sure of that.
Yeah, you should double check and make sure we're not monetizing your videos.
Yeah. Because I would like it if people didn't have to deal with ads.
I mean, if this turns into a huge thing and we could do it full time, that'd be maybe.
That would be the only time that monetization would be necessary is if we want to devote this to a full-time thing.
This is our job, yeah.
Yeah, because then at that point, we kind of need to make a living to do this full-time. So that's an understandable. But for right now, we're perfectly fine with our current careers.
Oh, yeah, no, it's good. So anyway, so questions will be posted. And you guys can feel free to post questions. We can either address them in person. You can message us on Facebook. Both me and Levi do it. If it's serious, it's Levi. If it's a sarcastic joke, it's probably me. And then,
or if you have questions that are directed specifically at one of us, that's also fine.
Why did you say this thing?
Yeah.
Or why do you believe this? You're a heretic. And I'm well, let's address that.
Yeah. Feel free to point questions specifically at one of us. But if you have a general question, we're both happy to tackle it together. But yeah, I think it'd be good if we did another episode, just because I feel like if it's a hard question and I want people to like hear the tone of my voice, you know,
it's like you want it to not come across as a sarcastic joke.
Exactly.
I mean, I'll probably still make it a sarcastic joke because that's easier to do but when people are listening.
Yeah, true. Either way, we would love to hear your questions in related to this topic, and you know, from there we just kind of address them because we want this to be more of a community and not just like two white guys in a basement.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, hey, you're half Latino. You get some privilege points.
Don't. No, we're not going there. Anyway,
okay.
This has been The Bible is Metal.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Levi.
All right, have a great week, guys.
Bye.